I'd like to start the May 9th, 2011 Single Family Design Board. Kathleen, would you call roll, please?
Sharon Iceland.
Here.
Denise Williams. Brittany Bernstein. Here. Aaron Crow.
Here.
Brian Miller.
Here.
Jim Smith.
Here.
Paul Smith.
All right, thank you. At this point, I'd like to open up public comment. Any member of the public may address the Single Family Design Board for up to 2 minutes on any subject within their jurisdiction that is not scheduled for a panel or a public discussion before the board today. Anybody? Not seeing anybody, I'll close public comment and move to the approval of the minutes for the April 25th, 2011 Single Family Design Board. May I have a motion for approval?
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Everybody go through the minutes, and we'll go item by item, if you could. And any edits or additions, just let me know. Item number 1, which is 1311 San Miguel Avenue. Any comments? Item number 2, 1233 Mission Ridge Road. No comments. Number 3, 1117 Las Alturas Road. I did have a little note for maybe to ask Paul. We had talked about the front entry proportions. There was some comment, and I think you maybe withdraw that comment. And it looks like it's still kind of showing up. Does it matter?
It just says the word study.
Study the proportions.
Of the front entry.
Okay, which is a good idea.
It's a good idea.
Anyway.
It's a mix between people being how strong we wanted to say
Okay,
that.
so we'll keep it as is.
Okay.
So that is number 3. Number 4, 1304 Crestline Drive. Any comments? Number 5, 707 Chiquita Road. And number 6, 2547 Metcalfe Road. Any comments? Okay. So I'd like to vote on approval of the minutes. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? And abstain? I have to abstain from item number 6. Okay. So we'll move to the consent calendar for May 2nd, 2011. May I have a motion for adopting the calendar or approving the calendar? Jim first, second by Aaron. And Michelle, if you could read the calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, the consent agenda for Monday, May 2nd, 2011. Item A, 1335 Mission Ridge Road. Received approval as submitted of the review after final. Item B, 621 Calle Oro. It's granted final approval with conditions. Item C, 414 East Alamar Avenue. It's granted project design approval and final approval with NPO and with conditions. And item D, 1423 Shoreline Drive, was continued 2 weeks to the consent agenda. Item E, 49 Via Alicia, was approved as noted of the review after final. Items were reviewed by Jim Zimmerman and Denise Woolery.
All right, thank you. Is there any discussion on any of those items? Not seeing any. I did have a question on the item B. I thought we had in our minutes that this actually got final approval the week before.
Item D.
B.
Item B.
B, as in boy.
621 Calle Oro.
Maybe
It received a project design approval by the board on February 14th and was continued to come back for final.
Okay, I was going through some minutes, and I thought I saw it, but maybe I didn't. Okay. Yes, Bernie.
I just want a clarification on 1547 Shoreline, and I'm not even sure where we are with that Planning Commission and this environmental assessment review.
I'm sorry, Bernie,
What was the
which
name?
item are you referring to?
1547
Is that-
Shoreline.
Is that on this agenda?
Is this on the consent agenda, May 2nd?
It's on the 25th consent agenda. correct?
We're currently reviewing the consent agenda for May 2nd, so can we just finish that and take a vote before
Yeah.
we...
Okay, and then this is on the next one? I'm ahead or behind?
You're on
or-
April
You're-
25th?
You're
Okay, I just want to
behind.
make sure we don't vote on it before we talk about it.
Well, we just voted
We
on
just
it April
voted on it.
25th.
Okay, well then I want to bring it back because I want to figure out what happened.
Okay, well, let's take a vote on the Monday, May 2nd consent agenda, which is before us now.
Okay. So any additional comments on the May 2nd consent agenda? Not seeing, I'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Say aye. Opposed? Abstain? Okay, so that motion carries. And let's finish the consent agendas, and then we'll go back to Bernie's question. Like to approve or have a motion for approval of the May 9th, 2011 consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that.
Paul's first.
I'll second.
All right, Brian. And Michelle, if you could read that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Today's agenda for Monday, May 9th, 2011. Item A, 401 Alston Road, is granted final approval as submitted. Item B, 1224 Calle Cierto, was granted final approval as submitted. Item C, 260 Eucalyptus Hill Drive, was granted project design approval with NPO and final approval with conditions. And item D was 1538 Manitou Road, was granted final approval as submitted. And the items were reviewed, items A, B, and C were reviewed by Jim Zimmerman and Denise Woolery. And item D was reviewed by Paul Zink and Denise Woolery.
All right, thank you. Is there any additions or edits to that agenda? Not seeing any, I'll take a vote for approval. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries unanimously. So Bernie, I want to go back to your question about the shoreline.
Expert on this, and I don't understand what is going on with this, or if we just approved it, or what. So maybe you could clarify that.
So let's get to the
It's page 11.
page 11.
Item C of April 25th draft.
This was the consent agenda on Monday, April 25th. And it was a new item on consent, and it was for, let's see. Oh yeah, this has a case planner. This is Kelly Brodeson's case, and this was just on review for comments only for for landscaping. And so it was just received positive comments by the board and was referred to Planning Commission. It will come back to design review on consent for final landscaping.
Okay, I'd like clarification, maybe you can give this to me. The proposal includes the as-built removal of one eucalyptus tree from the coastal bluff area. So what does that mean, actually?
They removed a tree without a permit.
Just one tree?
Just one tree.
Because I don't know if this is the property, but there's, a lot of properties that are basically mowing down all of those eucalyptus trees along shoreline, and I don't know if anybody's really noticed.
Well, this was an enforcement case, and it was brought to us by a member of the public because they realized they were doing work without permits, and now they're in the system to obtain the permits required.
And staff has verified it's only one tree that was in question.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, in addition to this, they did actually have, again, this was a case planner project by Kelly Brodeson, and there was an administrative approval to remove separate additional trees. I don't recall at the moment how many trees, but that was done prior to this enforcement case being brought up.
So they had a permit to remove those trees. Okay. So Bernie, did that answer your question? Or are you kind of casting a little net a little further?
I just am thinking, what does that mean that people are cutting down the trees, and then a neighbor notices, and then, oh, by the way, the trees are down, and then the city goes out and they don't do anything?
Well, and maybe Heather can provide some additional insight, but we do have, as of a couple years ago, a tree ordinance that permits, or when people remove trees without permits, there is a fine structure that's established, and there's, based on whatever the diameter of the tree was removed without a permit, there can be established fines up to as much as $5,000.
And then, of course, the role of the single-family design board when a project like this comes before you is you can take a look at mitigation measures for replacing the tree that was removed with an appropriate species or size of tree and location on the property if that's something that the board thinks is needed, and that's provided for.
It was a consent.
It came
Yeah,
through.
so
the
it didn't
consent
come
calendar.
to the board. So I'm just saying, we don't want this stuff to circumvent. I think that when there's going to be a lot of significant tree removal, that they should come to the full board then.
So Bernie, what I'd recommend is go through your agenda, and if you see something, you can pull it up to full board if that's what you want, but this has already been through consent.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you. I'd like to move to announcements, if we have any announcements.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I do have one quick announcement. Just wanted to let the board know that the project, which was last reviewed on Monday, April 25th at 1233 Mission Ridge Road, the project was granted project design approval 2 weeks ago, and that was appealed to the City Council.
So you'll keep us updated as to when that would occur?
Yeah, and most likely we will request a member of the SFDB to attend that council hearing. We don't have a tentative date as of yet when that will go to council. But as if you recall, that item was also appealed at the staff hearing officer level and then went to Planning Commission. And so the Planning Commission approval was appealed. And so the council will review both the Planning Commission appeal and the SFDB design review approval.
All right. Thank you. Any additional announcements?
Yes, Chair Deisler, Heather Baker, project planner with the Design Review and Historic Preservation section here. Yes, I have a few announcements for you this afternoon. One is that we're working on your training for this year and next year. That's part of participating in a design review hearing body here with the city. We do provide a training each fiscal year. And so for this year, what we're looking at is another Robert's Rules of Order type of update and training. We have a video that we can show you. It's about an hour long. We thought we would just try out about 40 minutes or so for one session and talk about it and see how it can apply to help with our meetings and help them be more efficient. The topics that would be covered are roles and responsibilities, motion, voting, debating, and amendments, as well as amendments to amendments. So just a little brush up and to help you all with your deliberations. And then for next fiscal year, what we were looking at, which may actually happen this summer, depending on the amount of internship help that we have as well, is to go out again and look at projects that have been approved and built, actually finished being built in the last couple of years. We did that as part of a review of the Neighborhood Preservation Ordinance update process, and it seemed that the board members felt that it was a useful exercise at the time. And we do something similar with both the ABR and the HLC, so that you can just kind of see, are things turning out the way that you're intending? Is there any different types of comments that you need to be making, or so forth? And the other topic of interest that we thought the board might be interested in is some sort of a green building training. There's been particular interest by the Planning Commission to make sure that the ABR, HLC, and SFDB are up to speed as far as LEEDs projects, but we don't typically get LEEDs projects for a single-family residential home so often, unless it's part of a subdivision, which, again, we don't have so many of those. But perhaps something about our local green building program or some of the other green systems that are out there. So a brief training about that. And second, I just wanted to let you know that the guideline updates that we've been working on, we thought would be going earlier. The city attorney had more comments than we thought they would, so we'll be at council with those on May 17th. And then last, I had a just bit of good news. I have a couple awards to show you. The American Planning Association has a Central Coast chapter, and they had their award ceremony in April. This one is for Solar Energy System Awards, and I'm bringing that I'll tell you why in just a moment. And then the other is for the Neighborhood Preservation Ordinance update process. And I know some of you commented during that long public participation process, and also just obviously your board's implementation of that program is so key, and so really you're part of all this effort that led to the award. And it was in the category of hard-won victory, and in that it was just a long public participation process because it was so controversial, trying to come up with a compromise that felt people could live with for some time. And so I think that we have that at least for now, and that's a positive thing. With the solar awards, I'm bringing that partly because part of the program, again, is that we do encourage the Single-Family Design Board in your residential design guidelines to look for places for potential future solar on rooftops, and that's was part of the program that we were recognized for. And I think when the guidelines first came out, it was maybe something you were doing very consistently with every project, and we're actually looking at going ahead and encouraging multifamily and commercial projects to do that as well, and we're going to look into see if we can get that on the application handouts to encourage people to do that, because we run into a recent issue with some projects where they weren't letting us know early on that they had solar proposed. So I just want to let you know that that's a great technique if you would like to continue with asking applicants, how is your roof venting system set up? Do you have that 200 square feet set aside for potential solar in the future? Okay, so that's it for my 3 announcements. Were there any questions or comments on those? And does the training sound somewhat interesting for this year and next year?
I have a question on the training. The first item, is that something that you're going to actually present at one of our boards? Or is this something that's independent of our meetings?
Right. In the past, we've done the training separate from your actual meeting time, and the attendance wasn't as well as we would have hoped. And so we are going to go ahead and have it as part of your regular meeting, and it would be at the beginning. It would not be televised, though, because the video, it's they attempt to be humorous, and someone tuning in from the outside might not realize, what if they see, SFDB at the bottom. They actually have example boards there, and it's not your board. So we thought we wouldn't televise that portion, but it will be during your regular schedule.
Is there any schedule on when this will occur?
I emailed it to you this morning. It's in 2 weeks. Okay.
Oh, 2 weeks. Okay. So next time we see you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
Yes, Bernie.
Say that we're in the process of updating. There's some updates. Is this the last round from last year, or we're still on the same stuff from? Okay, and it's just going through the process.
I think that this was updated last year, actually, but the reason why it's being updated again is not because of changes needed to your guideline document necessarily. It's because we were providing a similar type of document for the Historic Landmarks Commission. Right now, their version of this document is only 14 pages long, and so it needs to be radically updated. It hasn't had the type of update that the ABR and the SFDB have gotten. So really the focus is on updating the HLC guidelines. We've had some changes to the ordinance over the last year as well, so the update to these guidelines will reflect that as well. But there's no major changes as far as the way things are done for your board.
Any other questions for Heather? Thank you.
See you in a couple weeks.
All right. Subcommittee reports we'll move to, and I don't believe we have any subcommittees at this point, so we'll move to item number 1, 1311 San Miguel Avenue, and I believe we have some minutes from the previous meeting, and we'll have the applicant come and we'll get our drawings in front of us. Welcome.
How are you? Waiting, Mark Winke, architect for the owners. This is Betsy Casriel, the owner, one of the owners. Well, this new plan comes out, we basically did what we talked about last time, which was specified the plans, put a little additional lattice wall up on the west side,
Put out
and made the planters.
Okay, for reference.
just reference. This is just supplemental information, so this will be a complete.
Doesn't sound like it, does it?
These are the new ones here.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, so basically, that's what we did. We did a couple different stop gate measures. There's a section through here, too, that also helps explain it, but we met with the landscape architect, Chris Gillian, actually, who's in my building, and he specified the plants for this area, on both sides and have an additional little lattice wall here that'll help aid both while the plants grow and potentially as an additional screening measure. The shape is basically the same. This shows that the distance from the property line to the edge where you could basically stand is 10'2". The center line there is, or that dimension shows 15 feet. That's the setback per the policy guideline for the you guys all know about. And excuse me while I turn. So as you can tell, this is the rear elevation and that is the side elevation, which faces the most direct, closest neighbor affected by the setback. And has the planting area here, the plants. I mean, these are just CAD drawing plants, and the wall shown there. The railing then comes across. The two side walls are just simple walls with the lattice over them. I got rid of the extra railing wall part of it. The lattice could aid both in view restriction, both directions, and potentially for any vines that we might want to grow while the other plants are growing, or in addition to them. But I don't think we need to have the vines at this point. I think the plants themselves are really attractive. And I submitted the pictures of the plants in addition to the names. This section here is basically shows a person standing here. There's the fence, or not, sorry, the lattice, number 18, and the plants up at that level. Yeah. These, can you say the names of them so I don't...
Formium tenax palmatum.
Okay, that's the main plant. As you can tell, I think it says 2 to 3 feet high. They're basically a natural-looking xeriscape type plant, and they're surrounded by those.
Arcturus sunspot orange.
Yeah, so it'll be kind of a very natural-looking, which actually matches the planting in the rear yard as it is today.
Okay.
So we are putting them on both sides, although this is really the only area we've been talking about the last couple of weeks, to keep this sort of symmetrical off the existing doors, which are located right there.
And this is part of, do we have a plan in this set of drawings, or is this just a...
That was just all
Okay.
he did. I just put his notes on here
Okay.
and on that page you saw previously.
Anything else for your presentation?
That's it.
We didn't read the minutes, but effectively you were asked to provide additional information, screening and landscaping, which is what you gave us. So at this point, I'll open up public comment. Is there any member of the public that wants to comment on this project? I don't have any slips, nothing in the files.
That's to refresh our memory.
Okay, we'll close public comment, and I'll read the minutes. This project was here 2 weeks ago. It was continued 2 weeks to full board with the comments to provide additional information on screening and landscaping proposed at the west side upper level deck. That was really the only comments, is we just needed some more information to evaluate it. So I believe we got that. I'll open it up to the board for their questions of the applicant. Jim?
I think that, what is, you're calling it a screen? Is it a louvered screen, or is it something that
It's a
a
lattice.
vine can get inside and grow up?
Yeah. It's a lattice. I think I called out as 2x2s with 2x4 top. and
Oh,
bottom.
okay.
Additional questions? Ms. Bernie?
Calculate the FAR. Is it true that they do or do not calculate this 142 square foot second story roof deck?
Michelle, could you answer that?
Yeah. Bernie, we do not count roof decks. We only count habitable enclosed floor area.
Additional questions? Move to comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes, Denise.
What is the height of this trellis from the ground plane?
This second section, this lattice section, is 18 inches higher than...
So does that hit at eye level, or?
Yeah, it's about
Right on.
5'4", I think it was. 5'6", does it say right there? But the wall itself is 3 foot. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't quite seeing it delineated exactly as to the height of that, because the that Formium Tom Thumb, to my knowledge, doesn't get very big. Aaron, can you help me out there? But I think it's a little tiny thing.
Which one is that?
It's the main plant that you have in the planters is a dwarf plant, dwarf Formium, which is only about this big when it grows up to be a man. So I don't know that that's going to do the trick as far as screening goes, but. Let me see what it says here.
35 centimeters. What was it?
35 centimeters high. Anyone want to translate that?
Oh, 35 centimeters is tiny.
Yeah, it's really a tiny plant. So I don't think that's
Well, that doesn't look like 35 centimeters.
well, it just depends
It's
on
4 centimeters plus or minus 3-point-something centimeters per inch. Anyways, it looks, I mean, he told me it was 2 to 3 feet high and that's what that looks like in the main section of it.
So
And
maybe
then these are the shorter ones.
Yeah, that's just
The
a
color,
ground cover. And I mean, it's a pretty combination. I like the combination a lot. I just was expecting something a little taller, I guess.
So Denise, maybe we could, in a comment, talk about what height would be.
Would be appropriate.
Would be-
That's why I was trying to figure out how high the barrier was. And because I mean, if you can see right over the top of it, then it's all sort of, and it's to keep you from looking down onto the neighbor's
Right,
backyard.
that's why I designed it as a 2x2 lattice. You can see from the elevation too in 2 directions. Because basically, when you stand here, you can't see through the lattice
Okay.
In that direction, or vice versa from down below. You can see kind of through it, but you can't see down because of the proximity of the location of the on center of the 2x2s.
I see. Okay.
Anybody else? Anybody else?
It does say it gets larger later as it grows.
Aaron?
I think that they've done a nice job with the lattice, the guardrail. The type of plant I think would be like right about there where you could kind of see over it, kind of see through it, sort of a partial screen. So I think it's
So
it's 30 inches tall, 24, 30.
And again, what we're trying to, I think, prevent is sort of a downward view. So obviously, if it's right at level, it would prevent you possibly, or probably should prevent you from looking at a downward angle. And you're actually pushed back, it looks like 6 feet or so from that screen. So there's already an angle established there with that sidewall. So
I think it's acceptable from my point of view. But barely.
Well, the applicant has also shown us a picture
Yeah.
that is bigger, and they seem to like the bigger one, so that's probably good.
I think it's okay. And my only suggestion, comment would be, is there a hose bib you could set up an automatic irrigation system on that deck?
We were going to put a hose bib up there so you can wash the deck off anyway.
Yeah, you could do like a little battery timer or something there to make sure it gets watered.
Right. Okay.
Additional comments? Did we already look at all of the colors on the deck and what, is there a match existing?
Yeah, it's match existing,
Okay.
and it's basically white with gray,
Okay.
white trim.
If no other comments, I'm looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion for project design approval. Making the findings that they provide adequate screening, compatibility, and the only comment would be to provide some sort of irrigation system for the planters.
And that would be NPO findings, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there a second there?
I'll second that. And then if we can add one more comment. If there isn't a color board on file, that the applicant provide a color board.
Okay.
Just for the record.
Is that okay with the first? Okay. Comments, additional comments on that motion?
Mr. Chair, if I could just interject to clarify, was that a project design approval with NPO and final, or are you continuing it to consent for final? And if you're continuing it, what information do you want?
I would say
We need a-
for final.
We just need a color board. And
Just need a color board, but staff can make.
Because it's matching existing, then it's really,
Yeah, we know they're on here.
it's a paperwork issue at some point. So, Aye. Okay. Does everybody understand the motion? Any additional comments? No? Okay, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I'm opposed. I don't think it's going to go by.
All right, and abstentions, none. So we have 6-1 approval, and I'll announce a 10-day appeal period.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to move to item number 2, which is 1304 Crestline Drive. We saw this project as well, I believe, 2 weeks ago, and we have some minutes in the file. That will be up shortly. And if the applicant could introduce themselves.
I'm Dawn Sherry. I'm the architect on the
Welcome.
project. And, while Michelle's bringing the plans out, I'm talking into a green-lit mic. And then I have some details. They're preliminary, but I was asked to also bring in some of the detailing.
I want to
So,
kind of
do you
hold.
wanna read the
Yeah, I want to
minutes?
get the minutes first, just so that.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, if you could read probably that point there.
Minutes from 4/25/2011. We were continued 2 weeks to full board with comments. Number 1, the board finds the proposed contemporary design for the project acceptable. Number 2, provide articulation to soften the massing of the building from the street and from the rear elevation, in particular the deck over the garage door at the front and breaking up of the massing at the rear elevation. Provide design details, and provide photographs of neighboring contemporary houses of similar style.
Thank you. So now, Dawn, if you could address
Yeah.
those comments.
So we drove around the neighborhood, and I know this was an issue discussed last time, and I think everybody was pretty comfortable with the contemporary nature and the positive comments that we got before we made our changes. But I just thought I'd bring by some photos that we took of the neighborhood. This is our existing house, by the way. You wanted to see what that looked like.
Can you point to where these are on the map, or some idea of
I
where
didn't
they
do
are?
that.
I see some numbers here on the
They're
map.
all here. They all correspond to a photo, but I didn't have time to relate all of them. We just wanted to show you that they were within a couple of streets and in the same subdivision, but I didn't actually correlate.
So all of the pictures that you're showing
Are all the-
are on this map.
Yeah, and they're all numbered.
Okay.
So they're all the numbered ones, but I just don't have numbers on these. That one, which is lovely. I'm just going to, if everybody's looking on here, I can overlap.
It's better too.
There seems to be a wide variety.
I tried to pick all the either mid-century modern with a gabled roof and a large overhang, or flat roofs.
Okay.
It goes on and on and on.
Mr. Miller, didn't you ask for this?
I did this just for you. So this last one is, I'm glad this one was last, because this is kind of the direction that we're taking, only I think we're doing a much, actually, in my opinion, a nicer job of it.
Okay.
So that's that issue. As far as the detailing, I brought in some preliminary details, and they also show up, there a couple of the parapet wall details. If you go to the elevations, I want the colored elevation to be over here. Brian, if you could move that one down. Not that that's the color, but I'll go over the color differentiation in a second. But on the second page of the elevations, I took off the trim at the top of the parapet because I just thought it would be cleaner if we didn't do a cap trim and just keep it real clean. So that's one change I did make, and I just want it to be a clean plaster detail to the parapet. So there was a double line here before, and an extension, not a crown, but a very simple rectangular extension that I think it would be cleaner without. This is just a preliminary, these are preliminary details, but and I'll show you a photo of this detail. It's where we have the 12-inch glass railing over the plaster wall on the front of the house, and also around the side of the house. And now might be a good time for me to show you. This is a house we just finished in Montecito that has some similar detailing. And this was brought up when I came in before about somebody maybe didn't quite see my vision for this house. So I called this particular style, for lack of a better term, a Beeson contemporary Mediterranean. It's a flat roof Mediterranean. So the detailing of the trellises is very simple and clean. Here's one that would be similar to the type of detailing that we want to do. And maybe, Brian, it was you that asked, how do I visualize? I can't remember who it was, but I think it was you. What inspired the detailing? And then here's one where the plaster columns are just very simply detailed with a bullnose. And the eaves, this one has an eave that actually cuts in. But mine wouldn't. It would be a bullnose detail at the top. Here's a detail looking down at that trellis. And here's a kind of a typical wood railing with a brushed stainless railing and support. This is an example of if you'll notice, I have folding door units that go back. And then so the back of the house would be a folding door system like a lift and slide or a folding door system, and it would be a dark brown to pick up on the brown of the trellises of the stain. This is a detail of how the track lays into, in this case, a stone wall, but in our case it would be a plaster wall. But it's a real clean detail with a space between, and then again a real clean rectangular brushed stainless cap. Here's a close-up of that track, and then here's a close-up of the end of that detail, of how that works. So this is the direction that my final details will go. I hope that answers that question. And then I was looking at different ways to break up the plaster color, and I thought that there was an opportunity, not with yellow. It just didn't. It printed kind of odd, but what I picture for this color to be a mid-tone, cooler, like earth tone brown, not a warm, muddy brown, but a more earth tone brown, and but not real dark, just kind of a mid-tone range, and then offset with the white. But I kept the center section just a full, kind of a dominant white piece. But this is an opportunity for my garage element to wrap. And then as this garage element wraps around, this is the front, and as it wraps around in the side, it can pick up on, it can kind of make this side of the house disappear. And as it comes around to the back, it's the same corner and it wraps. And then it can end right there where this piece pops out, again white. So the front would be a combination of the darker and the light, and then the back would be a combination as well. But the darker tone would also maybe make the house not appear so large on the lot. What else can I say? Oh, the back elevation. Since we are here, before I had shown you a couple of trellis details that were applied similar to these to the back of the building, and some members of the board felt that the back was a little stark, so we introduced a trellis element at the corner, and we picked up the trellis from the upper level deck and extended it over this piece in the same line. This one was always here, but you can see on the plan that we picked it up here. It also makes a really nice transition because all this area opens up. So now this becomes an outdoor dining room that all kind of flows together. So it worked out really well for us. And then the only other comment, I think, was that we expose the corner instead of having a wing wall here and that element from the front, that we expose that corner of the deck for the master bedroom. I think that was it.
All right, thank you. Public comment, is anybody here for this project? I don't see anybody or see any slips. Is there anybody that sent a letter? I don't believe so. We'll open it up if they did.
Sherry,
Okay, so we'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for their questions.
what's the thickness of the walls? Are you rolling the plaster in? Will we have the windows, like the long strip window there?
It's an existing wall, and we're just going to be retrofitting, new windows, and there's not a lot we can do there. But we're going to do the best we can to. We'll get a bullnose, but it won't be a thickened wall, a really thick wall.
Duncan, are those details applicable to this project?
Yeah, they're preliminary, but I mean, I can show you the direction of the lighting, the step lighting, downward facing, up under the eave of the second story above the entry would be just a recessed fixture, and then on the back, a downward, real simple, kind of anodized aluminum, dark to match the windows and doors, stone veneer. The windows, like I say, are just a standard thickness, so they would basically have to reframe this whole house if we were going to get a double thick wall, and we don't. They just can't afford to do that.
But is it just a bullnose edge on it, or?
It would be a bullnose, and we'd set it back as far as we can.
Okay.
Yeah, it's flush to the interior. Scuppers, that shoe for the railing, the preliminary detail here of the roof, even though I'll have another detail at the base, and overflow scupper, I have that detail. Also, we did it on here.
Additional questions, Aaron?
Yeah. What were you thinking about the window trim color
The dark brown.
to match the trellis? Okay.
Okay. More questions or comments at this point?
I have a comment,
Brian?
Mr. Chair.
Brian?
I think it's great. I mean, what I see here, especially subdivision, is a Hopi village, Hopi Indian feel to it. It's very south. I don't know if that's what you thought, but I mean,
Not exactly, but
I feel,
I'll take it.
I mean, it just strikes me as being very Southwest Hopi Indian, a very strong feeling that really calls to me that way. Sorry. Anyway, so I like the textures. I think you did very well in terms of the textures, the introduction of the wood trellis, the way the windows, again, the way you have the horizontal windows and then the vertical windows. If you've ever seen Hopi Pueblos, they do very similar situations like that as well.
I haven't, but I will look now.
It's kind of amazing. So I think you did a really good job.
Thanks, Brian.
Additional comments? Bernie?
I actually agree with Brian. I think that you did a very nice job with the architectural style, and I can buy the argument that it fits into the neighborhood because the neighborhood does have a lot of different styles. However, what I think our board really wants to pay attention to in terms of our neighborhood preservation ordinance is, number one, the house is 84% of the maximum, therefore we don't have to do anything about studying the 20 closest homes. And I think if you look at the combination of the exterior staircase, the huge 652 square foot roof deck, which provides a lot of living space, even though it doesn't count, 42 square foot second story deck, and all of this together, even though I think the house is beautiful and I like the quality, I really think it's too much. It's just too much. That's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. Additional comments?
Well, this was reviewed and approved, wasn't it?
It was, I don't believe it ever got any approval.
Oh,
It was comments before.
just comments?
And
To
I'm-
go to Ahmad.
yeah.
Okay. okay. We had a straw vote on the whether the design was the modern design.
Yeah, the modern design, it seems like there was favorable comments, and I haven't heard anything about that from our board. Bulk mass scale, I'm kind of looking to see if there were comments on that before as well. Unify, study. But I, you know, the majority of us have been on the board and seen this project a couple times over the years. And I believe we gave the applicant assurance that the project would be acceptable. We haven't asked her to reduce the scale of it.
I did reduce
It's
it.
changed a lot of different times. Every time it's come back here, it's different.
Yeah, and I think it's actually changing for the better. I mean, it's a better design.
Pieces added to it every time.
Dawn, is that true? I mean, have you increased any square footage or
No,
volume?
we reduced the scale of the project.
The
We
exterior.
reduced the scale of the roof deck, and we had a significantly more deck on the back that had to be reduced because they couldn't afford to add onto the back of the house. So by taking the addition off the back of the house, we reduced that deck as well. So, and we reduced it back to be the 15 feet away from the neighbor, and we reduced it back from the front of the house at 1.2. So it has changed, but the concept of the house has been the same, and the square footage has actually decreased over the times that you've seen it. We've been kind of, it hasn't changed in the sense that it's like changed, it's been evolving, so to speak, and reducing in size.
Refining.
Refining.
How about
Yeah.
that? Okay. Yes, Paul.
I would actually say the design is appropriate. It's going in the right direction. I like the detailing that we see today. And the interesting thing about the decks is when you have a covered deck on the second floor, it adds to visual size, bulk, and scale. The deck here is a trellis, which is light, and it's only 42 square feet, so it's fairly minor. And the deck on the first floor, the covered deck, is just basically a covered patio. And they're at the 84% threshold, but it's still under the 100%. There's a 652 square foot deck, but that's on the first floor.
Above the first floor.
The second floors,
There's a second floor deck. There always has been.
yeah, there's always been, and in fact,
And the stairs have always been there.
Yeah.
And you can't see them from the street. And it's the only way to get up to the second floor deck.
Okay, I think we talked about that last week.
Yeah, and I'm fine with it from what I saw. See,
Sure, I remember seeing. Did we look at the pool? And the,
Yeah, I meant to tell you that. You did. And then you asked me to come back with photos that you have that show that you can't see the backyard from anywhere unless you were about 5 miles away above Foothill looking back with the telescope. You know, you can't.
like your drawings say, or is that just
The
a?
pool would be, because it would be drawn by the contractor, the pool contractor, and permitted, but you guys reviewed it, and you asked me specifically to come back with proof that you couldn't see it. It's at grade, and
The patio, the permeable surface or
Well, then the new
it's
patio.
going to be probably a slate tile, but there already is a patio back there, and we're just, basically there's really not much of a backyard. We're just going to make a nice living space.
What I'm getting
back
at is they qualify under a stormwater SWIP category for all that extra paving?
That's a good.
I haven't gone there yet,
That's a
but
good
we'll
question.
do whatever we need to do, and if it has to be semi-permeable, we can do that too.
Michelle, that's an interesting point. Does this project qualify? It has to meet Tier 2 or Tier 3 SWIP? I would think. We'll look that up.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Bernie?
I don't remember, is there any type of building associated with the pool?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chair and board members, it does require compliance with Tier 2, the basic BMP stormwater management program,
Tier 2? Okay.
and that's prior to final approval.
Okay, so we can give it project design approval if need be without that worked out. But Aaron's point is very good, is you might want to look at how to incorporate that design into your terrace, and you might have to modify some things to do that.
Sure.
That second floor deck tends to recess back with the the building wrapping around it, so it'd be different if it was projecting out. So I think it works very well in plan.
All right, thank you. Anybody else?
I agree.
Denise? Okay.
I agree. I think it's a good building and an improvement over what it is, and that it definitely has precedent in the neighborhood.
Okay, so I'll now be looking, I agree with the majority of the board. I think it's a successful project. I think the applicant has done a good job of refining the design, and I'd be looking for a motion for hopefully project approval, or another motion. See how that floats.
I'd like to make that motion.
Yeah,
For project design approval.
It wasn't very convincing.
Okay.
I was waiting to see if anyone else would. I'd like to make the motion for project design approval with the comments that we will await the Tier 2 stormwater management and see how that ties into the landscape and the landscape plan.
Okay, making findings for NPO?
And I'll make findings for MPO that the quality of materials, the mass, bulk, and scale is appropriate to the neighborhood. And
And do you want the project to come back on full board consent?
oh, well, I think it should probably come, let's see, for the Tier 2 and to see how that integrates into the landscape, perhaps it should come back to full board.
Don't we need to see the windows and the staircase and
There's details that'll be coming, yes.
Final details.
Yeah, we've seen preliminary, and for final, that would need that information.
And we'll also need a color board.
Color board is a big item, I think. In addition to light fixtures, and I have some on that. Is there anybody that's willing to second that motion? Aaron, and discussion on the motion. No discussion?
One time was it decided to turn back to full board or consent?
It was full board on the motion.
Okay, full board on motion, great.
All those understand? Okay. Take a vote on that motion. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And abstentions, none. The motion carries 6-1, and I announce a 10-day appeal period. Thank you.
Thanks. You want to keep one of these? You can keep one.
Probably need to keep most of the things that went on the camera.
Well, it's everything. Just this is that extra sheet that I brought, the detail sheet. You keep the color set. Darn it, Bernie! I thought I was going to get your vote. It's my goal in life.
So we're going to move to item number 3. 1117 Las Alteras Road. And we have some minutes from the previous meeting, which was 2 weeks ago. And we'll find those minutes and we'll get the drawings in front of us while the applicant finds their seat.
Mr. Chair, staff will have some comments on this project.
Thank you, sir. You want to go first?
I may, if you like. As part of this review, staff is requesting that you to take a careful look at the compliance with the neighborhood preservation ordinance. After the first review, we were alerted to the fact that there were some easements relating to the sewer location that has to be relocated on the site. And I think that's a result because the home is moving down the hill over that sewer location. There is a proposal. The applicant has been in contact with Public Works, so there is a solution to relocate that sewer. But I just wanted you to be aware of that complexity with the design. And if there is a proposal for more grading on the site, obviously we'd like to have you make sure that the grading is balanced if possible on the site, because there is a significant slope towards the bottom of the hill on this property. We want to make sure that this T-fire rebuild makes sense as far as the location of the home and setting. So that's my advice for you as you review this
Thank you,
project.
Jaime. At this point, I'll move it to the applicant. Introduce your team, please.
Hi, my name is Lenny Grant. I'm the architect for the project, and Eddie Herrera's with me. Has done the bulk of the design work for the project, and this is Brad Vernon, who is the general contractor representing our client.
All right, thank you. And your presentation, well, we're going to read the minutes from the previous meeting, so you can address those specific minutes.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Number 1, study reducing the overall size and height of the proposed project, particularly the south elevation. Provide site and building sections and plate height details. Reduce the plate heights. Study the proportion of the front entry. Provide additional information of the proposed pool, including a section through the pool. Provide a landscape plan.
Thank you. And your presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, we've, in addition to the items that were just mentioned, we did quite a bit of work on just looking at neighborhood compatibility and taking a look at the square footages of adjacent homes and across the street and FAR. So we've prepared a couple of supplemental sets that we've been working, up to the 11th hour on getting those square footages in FAR. So I'd like to hand that out. I've only got a couple copies, so I'm hoping that those can be shared. In addition to that, I'd like to hand out a bulleted list of items from last time. It was a little more extensive than what was just read from the notes, just as a guideline for us to work through every single issue, if that's okay. So these are
this is the bullets.
Highlighted bullet points. If you could we could share those.
This is just a recap of the last meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
And then these are 2 sets that go ahead and go through the FAR and square footages for neighborhood compatibility, if it's possible to.
Okay. Can you do a quick little presentation of what this is actually saying, so
Yes.
the people at home will be able to understand it?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is to do a very brief overview of the project and changes, and then have Eddie work through the details of the changes, because he's been more intimately involved in all of the changes and the design than I have. And then Brad can also answer some of the issues related to grading that were brought up in terms of balancing cut and fill and the neighborhood preservation ordinance, as well as any other constructability issues, if that's in question. But first of all, like I said, in a summary, I'd just like to kind of go back to square one really quickly in terms of when I first walked this site with Brad and our client. We not only walked up and down the site to be intimately familiar with the site and landscape and vegetation and the neighborhood and the adjacent homes, but we also drove up and down Las Alturas to take a look at the homes and how far they were set back, and just the driveways and view corridors and such, because I think really the goal was to design a home that fit our client's program, but also one that fit the neighborhood, the character of the neighborhood, and just the environmental impacts of anything we're designing. So I think we're trying to stay true to that, but then also bring up these are always great. These design review comments always makes a project better. So we're definitely trying to make every attempt to meet every issue you brought up last time, but also keep true to the neighborhood compatibility. So we think it's good site planning. We understand, my understanding is from the last meeting, I apologize I wasn't able to make the last meeting. From what I understand, the style was generally well received. The massing we were asked to look at the massing and break the massing down further. We've done that. That the FAR was too high, but we brought the FAR and the square footage down, but also taking a look at the 2 adjacent homes, we felt that it was, we didn't want to go too far below the adjacent homes, just from a standpoint of compatibility, and also trying to meet our client's program of trying to build the appropriate size home, the appropriate size rooms. We didn't want to shrink bedrooms or great rooms or living rooms to a point where they're not functional. So we didn't take huge cuts, but we definitely took some substantial cuts down in square footage and massing. And then where directed, addressing neighborhood concerns, which we understand were primarily based on scale and massing. But we do stand ready to look at any privacy issues that you think are appropriate, or any other issues still. So with that, I'd like to have Eddie work through the issues on a detailed basis, and request that we have time at the end to address any issues that are brought up by the board, if that's possible, to reserve a little bit of time at the end. With that, Eddie, do you want to join in?
Just going down the list here, basically I'm going to read through them for those who don't have the handout, but what I wanted to do was just highlight the items that I took note of that stood out as being the items that really needed some focus on. Size of the residence and garage was one major item I thought was generally brought up by everybody. Overall building mass and scale, the south elevation and what we can do to reduce that. The north elevation entry, we're looking at that and coming up with some site cross sections to give us a better understanding of what the site was doing. And lastly, the neighborhood compatibility, and doing some studies there with regards to FAR and lot sizes, square footages of the adjoining residences and such. So just to break it down, on the size of the residence and garage, what we did originally propose a 95% FAR. We went back and looked at the areas and see what we were able to take advantage of bringing down the floor areas a bit. Like Lenny said, one of the design programs was to try to get the rooms functional. So we weren't necessarily looking at trying to reduce widths of the rooms just because I think they would at some point become dysfunctional. And so what we were really looking at is like looking at the garage or the lower level basement areas and just trying to cut out some of those floor areas in those areas so that we reduce grading quantities. That was an item that was just brought up right now, but I think that helped us with our grading quantities and trying to reduce the site impacts. So reduction of 95 to 91% was what we are presenting now. The garage was reduced from 617 to 542. The overall reduction in the home, both garage and residence, was 222 square feet that we took out, getting us to the 91%. The overall building mass and scale, we took note of some of the comments that you made about the 10-foot plates on both upper and lower. So what we took, and looking at that, we ended up reducing the lower level 9 feet. We took advantage of the volume that we can get on the upper level and brought the upper level south face down to 8.6. And so we're proposing to do some volume in that upper level to get us the height that our client is looking for. Garage plate also got reduced down to 8 feet from 9. Looked at the chimneys and really brought those back down to what the minimum code would require, just to get those heights down as well. We looked at the landscaping buffer and looking at that south elevation and providing some planters to allow us to ground the building closer to natural grade and reduce the scale, the overall scale that those elevations were exposed to. And we have also taken the next additional step in providing you with a diagram of what we presented last with each of those 4 elevations and what the silhouette of the proposed is now, to kind of give you an understanding of how much reduction we've done in the massing. And then going on to the south elevation, I think that was another item that most of you felt we needed to kind of go back and look at. So what we've done with the south elevation is look at proportions, primarily the gallery volume space. The larger window originally proposed has been broken down by providing a single a roof line at the lower level and not as much of predominantly we brought down the window sizing down at that location as well. We've also taken a look at breaking down the 2-story mass at the southwest corner of the building by looked at what our neighbor had to say at 1121 and your comments, and so we've stepped back the building from that southwest corner from what we originally proposed. Also understood the importance of making sure that we didn't provide as a big visual impact on the neighboring property with the pool area and the privacy concerns that were raised. So what we've done is we've taken the patio section at the lower level that faced southwest and reduced that to just a stair that takes it to the ground floor. The overall natural grade at the south elevation, what we're doing is we're proposing to raise part of that southeast corner about 12 inches in natural grade. So we
Can you actually point to the things that you're talking about? Because we're not seeing any of the diagrams that are actually what you're talking.
Do that right now.
Okay, starting at the north elevation, what we've done is we re-looked at the proportions of the north entry element and studied the horizontal line at the ridge. Those are two items that were brought up. We talked about bringing down the mass at at the northwest corner of the building so that it wasn't so imposing on the neighboring side. So those are the items that we looked at and we've reduced. I want us to focus on the south elevation. I think that's the elevation that really was being looked at last time we came through. And so what I have is at the top is the elevation that we brought forth last time we met, and then the revised elevation below. What we've done also is we did a site visit once more, and we kind of took some grades off the existing neighboring property and kind of illustrated what those approximate finished floors were for those grades, just to kind of give some relevance to how the house would sit on the site relative to scale of the neighboring properties. But some of the things that I was talking about was taking the two-story gallery space and breaking that down, providing some relief at the lower level by providing a roof line. So stepping back this element here on the upper floor.
To here.
The other thing that we did was reduce the amount of deck area at the southwest corner to kind of give a bit more privacy to the neighboring property. We've also looked at the two-story face at the southwest corner. That was another area of concern, I thought. And what we've done is we just try to step back the southwest corner. Both you'll see it in the west elevation as well, how that is articulated. But I think it gives a nice facade for the neighboring property to look at. Primarily, it's looking at a one-story face in that section. And so I think we were successful in doing that. And then lastly, the item that talked about raising the natural grade. I think the other thing that we were looking at was making sure we didn't end up with too much of an exposure at the base of that foundation. And so we looked at potentially raising the natural grade at the southeast corner up a bit, about 12 inches, just to kind of get that corner. I think that's the corner that's probably the most affected in terms of exposure. So raising that up, using some planters in that section, just to try to bring down the scale as well. All that we looked at the plates. I think I already talked about the plates. The upper plate being at 8.6 on the south elevation, the 9-foot plate at the lower. All that pretty much brings the ridge height down to about 2 feet from average natural grade. Talked about the north elevation. We've also provided you with a site cross section that's located in the drawings to kind of give you some context of how the home sits. Would be, and it's section B, basically showing you how far down the site we're locating it and its relationship to the elevation of Las Alturas Road. In terms of visual impact, that it sits a home far enough away to provide some privacy for our client and still maintains the views. And lastly, what we did was we put quite a bit of research on the neighborhood compatibility, and those are the last 3 sheets that you'll find on the set. We looked at updating the silhouettes that you've already seen, in terms of the neighboring properties and what we're proposing. But we've actually have done a little bit more work and kind of doing some research with where the home is. We wanted to show you the footprint of the home that we're proposing relative to the site property boundaries and the FARs of all the neighboring properties. And what we've done here is we basically went onto the county assessor's website and just took the areas that they presented on the website and plugged those into the FAR calculator that your city has done. That's provided. And so it kind of gives you a snapshot, a glimpse of kind of compatibility. And I think that one of the things that really stands out for me on downhill sloping lots is that the slopes are severe in some areas to where it really forces the design to be as compact as possible and not as spread out to be able to get a design that actually can be built. Because the slopes are pretty sloped. They go from anywhere from, most of those slopes were about 40-30% slopes. So we try to take advantage of not having a footprint that was too large that was going to provide a lot of stepping on our building. The next sheet over shows another perspective, if you will. Primarily focusing on the three homes that we had some neighbors here the last time concerned about what it would do. For example, the neighbor up on the hill was concerned about whether or not he would retain his view with our proposed home, and you can see very well that his view actually gets better. And looking at both 1105, 1121, those two neighboring sites, and just looking at the compatibility and where the home sits relative to those neighboring properties, I think we've done what we could to kind of make it compatible. And then lastly, what I wanted to leave you with, we did superimpose the south elevation and the revisions to kind of show you the two-story face that essentially a bird's eye would look at. This is really facing the ocean, so really pedestrian view is on the north from Las Alturas. So I think, I think it's very compatible. The FARs are consistent, I think, with the neighboring sites. So I think I'll leave it at that. And I'm here to answer any questions. There's a lot of information, so.
Thank you.
If I can take 2 seconds to finish up the square footage of, we've reduced down to 4554 is lower by a couple hundred square feet than both of the adjacent lots. I know that that may not be ideal, but we are interested in being compatible, with this side of the street because of the lot sloping down. Essentially, our client was very interested in primarily single-level living in terms of having a master bedroom on the main floor of the house, a great room, kitchen, dining room, and there's a library. Below that kind of is square footage that, is there for secondary uses, but really you're trying to design the best first floor possible, and then underneath it you can reduce square footage, but it wouldn't necessarily reduce the FAR. So really just trying to design the best home for the lot. This is what I'm trying to say. And we've made efforts to address the comments that were brought up last time. So thank you.
Thank you very much. At this point, I'd like to open up public comment. I have 4 public comment speaker slips, and we're going to have to probably use that seat right there. If you could vacate it for a short period. And each speaker will have up to 2 minutes to make their comments. And I'm going to, in no particular order, go to Don Vogt. And if you could just announce your name and...
I'm Don Vogt. I am the one who represents the smallest FAR on the picture here, 58%, which I didn't know. We were concerned last time about some of the aspects that we could see because we are right above the property, and I am pretty impressed with what's been done here, how quickly it's been done, and an effort has been made both to meet your requirements, and from our standpoint it looks pretty good. The only thing that I think we haven't had a chance to see, because it hasn't been presented yet, is a landscaping plan. We've made a big effort to try to screen. We lost all of our lower landscaping in the fire and have replaced a hedge with a new hedge, which is doing a real good job of screening things for us. And of course, we look from a deck down, and our screening is so far coming up pretty well. But they're going to be looking from a house up, and our house is above where we stand on our deck, so that in terms of not seeing our house, they would have to come up fairly high in terms of landscaping stuff. So, but it would seem to me that because this house is down quite a bit farther, that the landscaping they're going to be looking at is around their courtyard and around their drive-in, and they're not likely to put any redwood trees up on Las Alturas. They're not likely to let them. But that would be our concern, is looking at the landscaping plan just to see that it kind of configures with what what we've got across the street. But this so far, it looks pretty darn good from our viewpoint. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. And then Caroline?
And then we didn't have a chance to see any of these new plans before. So
If you could come up here.
I don't have anything to say.
Thank you.
Because we had no chance to see it before.
All right, so we're going to move to Everett Woody.
I would represent the neighbor at 1121 Las Alturas. And one of our primary concerns is that all the easements are not shown on the proposed site plan at this time. We submitted a document last week showing the proposed, or the existing easements that you guys should have on file now. There's also an easement that comes from here.
Can we go to this set of plans so it's on the TV?
Sure. I saw it in the file last week.
Okay.
Anyway, 1121 has an easement from a manhole. Then the manhole exists on her property right around this location here.
There's a center manhole right there, the existing one.
Actually, it doesn't exist there. It exists over here on the neighboring property. And I think your survey actually shows that if you guys want to.
Sheet maps, yeah. Here it is, it's right there.
There's it.
So there's the manhole.
If you could just continue your comments.
Anyway, the easement documentation they now have on file comes from 1121 over to 117, and it comes under the building envelope. They also have an easement for this section of the pool wall here. And one of our main concerns is having the house located so far down the hill really imposes on the pool area that exists here for the neighboring property. So, you know, our one of the solutions we'd like to see is just have the house move back up the hill a little bit. Also, if we go to section BB, it looks to me, this is the existing grade that's here?
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
It looks to me like there's a lot more than a balanced cut and fill coming out of the property. I think the new calculations show that it's almost a balanced cut and fill, at least from what I saw at a glance. I could be wrong.
Okay, we'll check it out.
Okay?
Thank you. We're going to move to Gil Garcia.
Okay, Gail Garcia, and I just continue to talking on the same property and concerns I have. Go back to that site plan that we were looking at. Or the site plan with the. We saw a plan. They plan to come down here with the sewer line, I guess, from all the way from here, right? And go all the way down to here and back up.
Hold on, we'll ask.
Okay. And my concern is that there's some oak trees along here that are going to be really almost eliminated by that massive grading requirement. Yeah. So they're coming out here, they're going to rip them through these trees. I'd like to have also them look at the public works and bring to you perhaps a feasibility of that even happening, because we think this is only about 6 feet deep in here from a map that I saw, and I couldn't see the one that came across here, so when it came down here. But it looked like these might be 6 feet deep. Well, if you go down here and then it drops dramatically, and then you come up and try to come back up here, you may have to pump it up. I'm not sure. to make that connection back up here again. But all of this in through here, this area in through here is very steep, so you're going to be scarring the hillside dramatically here, and that's going to be a lot of, which is, very visible from down below, a scarred hillside making that move. So we think that this is all necessitated by the fact that you're having to move this and trying to move that, but even the feasibility. You're going to this person's property, and I guess you've got permission to do that, but they may have to go into this person's property. They were supposed to have talked to this person, and they never did, having to do with it. That was one of your recommendations. They haven't done that, so she's still waiting for a call and a sit-down to talk about these issues. But this is a major concern, and the grading, of course, continues to be a major concern. But I think the mass bulk and scale issue, even though it's less than this and a little less than that, the fact that you're building at the narrowest portion of the site gives it a very massive look. If you look at, you looked at the elevations, look at the elevations again here.
And Gil, you're going to have to wrap up pretty quick here.
The design, I want to look at the design of 3 projects together, because I think it's very telling of how.
You want to see the
last page. This even has a higher mass bulk scale, but you notice how these elements popped out and make kind of a courtyard look. It looks a lot smaller. This and these 2 are a bad example of what you don't want to do, and to have one like this next to this, very vertical, gives a major problem.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any other notes in the file for public record? No? So we'll close public comment and move it to the board for their questions, please. I think one of the questions is about this easement and where you are in the research of that and the legalities of that. Can you speak on that for a sec?
Yeah, should we pull back to the site plan? You mentioned, I think, 2 easements from what I could gather. One is, of course, a sewer line easement. The second he mentioned was an easement for the pool retaining wall back here. So the first issue on the sewer line easement, the topo we have, which we've had looked at several times, is that the manhole is on our property, and we have worked with the wastewater manager as well as looked at the heights of the manholes, and by proposing to move the manhole down the hill, we have more than a 2% fall from this inlet to the adjacent inlet, so we won't have to pump, and we do meet the city's requirements for standards for fall for sewer. So, and I don't think that we have a problem in terms of honoring the easement for the adjacent pool site. So I don't think we have any issues as it relates to the easements.
And second, can you speak on the grading aspect? You didn't. I don't know if we didn't present grading numbers during this presentation.
Right.
Have they been modified since what we see on the agenda? And what's the cut fill ratio?
Yes, they have been modified. They're actually, if you turn to the first page, both the cut and the fill have been reduced, and primarily that is a result of raising the lower level floor line. We went from 10 feet to 9, and we also took out area from the back of that retaining wall. And you'll see it in the floor plan that the retaining wall actually jogs a bit more than it used to. And so those 2 numbers, coupled with the raise on the lower floor line, I think we brought them down to 600. They're stated here.
620.
There we go. 490 for the cut and fill totals, and that's as it relates to the grading. I can read backwards.
Under main building.
Under the main building, and then 600 was a total cut and fill as it related to the surrounding site.
Did any of those numbers include any work for relocating the sewer line?
Those numbers included up to 5 feet out from the building line, and it included all of the grading, the planters, the driveway. The sewer line grading, I don't think we're going to be grading as much. Actually, that sewer line runs parallel with the existing contour. If you look at the topographic survey, there is some grading that's going to happen there.
So it's falling down.
That's falling down, and this line here, that's running parallel with the grading, with the grade contour. So What we've done is we've been conservative, and we've actually proposed, a little bit more cut and fill than what we expect on the driveway side, just overcompensating for the overall grading.
Let me make sure I understand your question. Did you mean the actual quantities of excavation and then filling back, or were you talking about
Moving of
change
dirt.
from
Moving of dirt.
Well, my understanding is that we are required to calculate any movement of dirt, both from construction activities and then change of fill and cut. So it doesn't sound like we've done the cut and fill for the actual excavation.
No, I just basically went from all the planters on up to Las Alturas Road.
And then the third item is this oak tree. Do we have a survey that actually shows these oak trees?
They're on the topographic survey, first item there. If you turn back one more sheet, there we go. So,
And what trees are affected by this, all the grading?
well, the easement that exists now, where the sewer manhole exists, that is just proposed to be abandoned. We're proposing a sewer easement extension from that existing manhole down to the new location. So in terms of removal of trees, we're not proposing to remove any trees on that site.
Are these trees here?
Those are, yes.
What are they?
Oak trees.
Oak trees.
They're not even labeled. The canopies aren't shown, they're not labeled.
We'll get that done.
Other questions from the board?
Sure.
Yes, Aaron.
On this section, I think it's BB.
This is a long tree.
There's a low retaining wall at the very bottom of the slope. I don't see that on the
this one
on the elevation though.
This one right here?
Yeah, the very low one. Is it, or the plan.
Would be the south elevation?
Yeah.
It's this one right here. This one.
This also.
Oh, okay. So those walls are only on both sides. They're not. Okay.
Additional questions? Bernie?
Thank you. One is for Jaime, actually. So you had given us at the beginning of this presentation some things to think about, and now that you've seen it, do you think that we are going to be, do you think that this is in compliance with the NPO now with this new plan, and did we take care of the easement issue with the sewer?
In response to your question, Ms. Bernstein, staff typically does not give you a recommendation. That's just one of our roles. However, if you're asking my opinion, I think this commission is, or this board is always having to balance the impacts of where you put a home on a lot. And in this case, the improvement in placing the home down further down the lot is it obviously opens up views to the neighbors and from the street. It's not as impactful. It doesn't have as much street presence. The balance you make is scarring the hillside by increasing the amount of quantity and auto courts that are associated with access to a home either up a hill or down a hill. So this is the balance that you have to make. Is it an appropriate amount of grading? The home is being set into the hill, but it is approaching the height limits that are allowed in the hillside. The 30-foot limit is typically now more harder to meet because the standard for that is measured to the existing or proposed grade. In some cases, the lowest of each. So I would just caution you to make it very clear that you're accepting size, bulk, and scale, and the height of the home. And as you move the home down the hill, is it causing excessive amount of grading or unnecessary grading? And that's where you get into the balance filling on the site. So that's sort of the question before you. And then the last thing I wanted to comment on is that it's unusual to propose this, what I was pointing out, to propose the relocation of a public or a city sewer line. And that is in fact a very unique solution normally you wouldn't even propose doing that, but if you have a solution that's feasible, and apparently they've had some discussions with Public Works that it is feasible, as long as all the easements are taken care of, because that's one of the questions, where are all the easements, and make sure that they are all straightened out in the future. What you're faced with is the quantity of excavation. Is it going to disrupt the trees in question, and the significant slope where this new sewer line will be? How disruptive is it to the hillside? Can you maintain the stability of that hillside with whatever measures you take in order to ensure that to happen? So that's my response.
Thank you. Thank you. I just have one more question.
Go ahead.
And this is for you, for the architect. First of all, we do appreciate you making the adjustments that you made and listening and looking at the neighborhood. That's really appreciated. I guess it's always the question is, where do you start and where do you end up? Do you start with 99% and end up where we want you to be, or do you start where we want you to? So we have to remember that as a board. Concessions are great, but if it's ridiculous to begin with and then it's great, we have to remember that. So my question is, the two largest homes that you're using with the large FARs on the last page, when were they built? And were they built before or after we had our board in place?
Well, this home, if you're looking at this picture, I'm pointing to the home to the left of the proposed residence here. This is a home that was built decades ago. So I'm sure that was before your board was in place. 1920s. Yeah. The home on the other side was a replacement from the fire. So, and from what I understand in talking to the owner of this home, it was replaced very, similarly to what was there before. So, and we're not here to try to say that because we're similar, therefore we're appropriate, but they are existing, and I think it's important to. It's one of the primary things to do is to look at the neighboring properties in terms of looking at what's appropriate. If we built something very small, then this would look small comparatively to the adjacent homes. I do think that it is important to look at the adjacent properties.
Questions, Jim?
I think it's important to contact the neighbor to the west and see what concerns she has. From what I gather is she's more concerned about relocating the sewer line, and I would like to see a drawing showing exactly where the sewer line is going relative to the oak trees. And then I'd like to see a report on what damage that would do to the trees, or whether you'd be able to do that without harming them.
A report from an arborist?
Yeah.
Okay. That was kind of a comment. We'll go into comments. Move to comments.
Actually, I had a question for staff on the easement stuff. Is it possible for the house to be built over the existing sewer easement, and sort of that's not an option at all?
No, that's typically not something that we approve, or at least Public Works did not allow that.
And to clarify that this easement is actually a public sewer line. It's not a private one being used by the adjacent neighbor. It's actually City of Santa Barbara.
There are several easements on the property, and one is an actual location of the sewer line, and one is to use and connect to it, I believe. So we'll be able to require those easements to be either shown as proposed or abandoned, depending on what the actual final solutions are.
But the actual pipe that's there on the property underneath the proposed house is actually City of Santa Barbara pipe?
That's correct. That's my understanding.
And they're... Okay.
Do you want to move to a comment?
I would... At first, Mr. Chair, my comment is that I thought the discussion with the sewer line was a private easement between one property trying to get attached to the city's sewer main. Now finding out that it's a sewer main, the city of Santa Barbara basically has to be okay with what we're doing because it's their pipe before we can even kind of move forward, because if the city says they can't allow us to, or the relocation, then this project needs to be redesigned significantly.
So let's ask the applicant, I mean, has Public Works approved this, a layout for the concept?
It's actually was wastewater management, I think is the department or something like that.
There are records of communication, and there is a feasibility sort of approval, saying it is feasible for you to do it. Now go pursue your engineering and your technical easements that are necessary in order to carry it out. So we would not issue a building permit, obviously, if it was not feasible or not approvable. So I would suggest you proceed on the assumption that if you're okay with it, that it doesn't have these impacts that you feel can be mitigated or are acceptable for the site, that you move forward. But I'd not recommend that you say go engineer it and design it before you can approve the home.
Okay. How about some general comments about the building?
Mr. Chair?
Okay, Denise?
I think that you've done an excellent job of making the changes that you did. I think in particular the south elevation and the west elevation toward the neighbor who has a sewer easement are really, really big improvements. I like that it's lower. I like that you didn't do the big palisade window on the south elevation on the top. I think it's very much in keeping with the neighboring house in its style and character, which makes it, for me, very approvable as far as neighborhood compatibility. You've also lessened the impact on your uphill neighbor. I don't think they're going to see a thing. You'll look well over the top of you, so you're not blocking anybody's views that I can see. I just think you did a great job.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Jim.
Yeah, I agree with Denise. I think the changes really improved the looks, and especially the west elevation. And I think you've done a good job.
Okay. How about some general comments about the site and how the location of the building and the grading components, the landscaping, the trees, the sewer is?
I am.
Okay, Mr. Miller.
I'm a little uncomfortable. I think we need to do some more homework regarding where that sewer line goes through with the oak trees. I do know that's a major privacy issue with that neighbor on the other side. That is the west side. This is a sensitive area right here. Some suggestions is perhaps reduce some square footages in the house itself. Some of the rooms perhaps get, I know this is not a good thing to do, but perhaps shrink these rooms on this side a little bit, pull it back a little bit, something like that. I would explore that possibility. But otherwise, I think you did some really good job of.
Thank you. How are you feeling about the grading component and the sewer?
I think they're kind of in a catch-22. I mean, if they push the property up, you've got view problems, and it kind of looks like the property was originally intended that your house would be built right here, but I see that they were answering a concern about off-street parking, so this is their solution, which I think is a very attractive solution.
So as Jaime sort of said, there's a balancing act here that is occurring.
Exactly.
So you're sounding like you're okay with the solution to me.
Yeah, I think it's, you're caught, as that famous saying goes, oh yeah, and you've got a setback. You're kind of caught between a rock and a hard place, and I think you probably did a good job of working that out. And it's funny that there's a sewer that goes right across the property like that, but it is what it is.
Okay. Other members? Paul?
I apologize, but I'm having a difficulty time with the project, and it's only because I just discovered today that it's actually a City of Santa Barbara public utility that we're relocating so you can build that house in that location. The grading numbers seem very minimal, but when I look at the sections, I kind of question it that maybe their numbers are accurate. But the amount of cut and fill that's shown there, if it's true, then it's remarkable. You're not moving as much earth as I thought you'd be moving. But as Brian Miller said, I mean, you're caught between a rock and a hard place. I see it as between your front yard setback and a public utility, and that is your building envelope. And your lot can be 10 times as big, and you can maybe build on the other side, but we're supposed to minimize grading in hillside environments, and by relocating a sewer pipe just so that you can have a larger building pad, I want to say it goes against the grain of what we're supposed to do. So even though I love the design, the solution, there's so many things I like about this project, it's just the fact that you're moving a public utility in order to make this building pad work that I'm uncomfortable with. Sorry.
Okay, Aaron?
Yeah. I think you've made some good moves as far as the detailing of the house. I think it's a much prettier solution. I think the comment about the cut and fill, I would just like you to double check that. It looks like there's more cut than fill. The arborist report, I think Jim mentioned that about the oak trees with the sewer. I think some stone might help this building at the base of it. I think a house of this quality, some stone, I think wouldn't be out of the question. So generally speaking, I'm liking the direction it's going. I do have some. I think it could be further reduced, though. I think we made a sort of a mistake with that house to the east, and
That was a T-Fire, wasn't it?
It was.
Mm-hmm. That was basically a like-for-like replacement, though.
Maybe it was.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, okay. So.
But that doesn't mean the original house would have been approved anyway.
Yeah. So, but I think you're in the right direction.
Okay. Bernie, any comments?
No, I'm ready to make a motion.
Go ahead, if you're ready.
To try. Okay, so I'd like to make a motion that you return to the full board with the set to include the following changes or modifications. Is one, to talk to the neighbor and clarify the situation with the easement. Two, reduce the square footage. The one house that's so big that was the like for like is just the only example of one that big. And while I understand what you're saying, that yeah, the three of them together should look good and fit together to meet our guidelines, it doesn't have to be stretching it so far. And maybe by reducing it, it will eliminate some of the other issues, which is to figure out if there's going to be any problem with the sewer line in relation to the oak trees. We don't want to see any oak trees taken down unnecessarily. I think we also would like to know more about the driveway when you come back.
We'll get to that. Is that your motion?
Anybody? Okay, I'll make that motion.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussion on that motion. Denise brought up the point of the arborist report in conjunction with the oak trees that would be affected, or no. I think we need a little bit more development on the site to really analyze what's going to happen with these oak trees. There's no canopy shown. There's not sure how they relate grading-wise, if we're modifying grading. I feel like there's probably a civil component that needs to come into this project in order to accurately identify what kind of grading numbers and grades that are going to be established here. Question to staff. This project is a T-Fire?
That's correct.
There's no tier levels. There is. Tier 3 SWIP. Okay, so that's an important factor. And so that civil component's going to come in question very quickly.
Mr. Chair, I recommend at this point that we get some engineered calculations on the grading quantities.
Absolutely.
That would be helpful to narrow down that issue of exactly how much cut and fill, and excavation would be necessary for the sewer.
I was going to just ask that. That probably should be included maybe as a separate number, but it should be calculated. Okay?
And one additional item, I think it's important if you include a direction to reduce the size of the home is that you really focus on where you'd like to see the reductions, because as you take out square footage, as the architect says, that you can take square footage underneath the home, it really doesn't change the size of the home. So are we talking about, is it too tall, is it too close to the neighbor?
Okay.
There were some suggestions about where that might be more helpful if it really is the motion that's going to
Yeah.
pass.
Yeah.
I
So-
was seeing the west elevation.
Okay, so let's get Bernie. Bernie, it's your motion. Do you have an opinion on where the square footage feels bad or where we can reduce it, and it would be an improvement to the project?
I would like to defer to someone else on that.
Who seconded it?
I don't think we did have a
So, Jim.
Well, I think that we were concerned with the west elevation. Because that's the closest to the adjacent house than the other side. And they did make an effort to recess it back in the center to break up the elevation. And possibly you could work with that west elevation a little more.
So we're pointing at this area here for hopefully a reduction in square footage, increase of space between the buildings or landscaping that's left.
Well, you might be able to make more room for the sewer line there too.
Okay. What about heights? Is there?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I think the ridge, the main ridge, from as viewed from the south elevation, if that were broken up, it would help a lot. It's just straight across there.
We don't have a roof plan, do we?
P8.
P8. Well, but this is just a simple gable and then the extensions on it.
You know, I think the roof plan's on P4. P5. Looking at the overall site plan, actually.
So I remember the last meeting, Paul commented there was a break in the ridge, but the design has changed now.
You
So,
gotta show that now.
but it's a step down, right? Yeah. So it's a main ridge though.
You can see the roof's here, and then there's a small gable right
Uh-huh.
here, and another gable here at these two lower elevations, and the main primary gable here, and then the steps down. So we do have some stepping. About 5 instances where that roof steps.
Okay. So, Jim, how are you feeling? Since I think you can kind of analyze this volume a little bit more than Bernie at the moment. Do you feel that this continuous ridge is acceptable, or does it need addressing?
I have no problem with the ridge coming across. I think that trying to break it up in some way might make it more looking at the bridge or the ridge more. I think it's low enough where I don't think it really needs any breaking up.
I would agree with Jim. I mean, it has a little bit of a drop plate here. It's got a gable shooting in here, and it's got this other piece here that breaks it up, and it's already set low on the site, so it's not going to be in anybody's view angle that I know of. So, yes.
Mr. Chair, I agree with you both as well. I think there's enough variation in the ridge, and it's lower than both properties on either side.
Okay, so Jaime, I think that gives a little bit of clarity to the reduction of square footage and wear, and maybe bulk mass scale reduction that could happen. I think the applicant is skilled. They've shown it in this project and other projects. We've been in front of our board. So I think he can do a good job there.
So we need to add a few more things into the motion, and anybody can add these on. But one is we'd like to include a report from the arborist in connection to the oak trees, and we'd like to have engineered calculations of grading quantities and showing a Tier 3 development. That's it.
Stormwater management.
Okay, Tier 3 stormwater management plan. That's it. That's all I have.
Okay. Any additional comments to that motion? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, we asked for the landscape plan at our last meeting.
I think that would be a good, at least a preliminary landscape.
A conceptual landscape plan.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Paul? Why?
I'm opposed to the extra grading that's going to be required for the moving of the sewer lateral.
Okay. Now, Bernie, did you talk about, did we have a time period as to when the applicant would return? And how much time would you need?
Indefinite continuance?
Indefinite continuance to full board.
Could we also, have you look at what Paul's concern, and maybe if there's any alternative you can show us, that might be helpful.
He can consider it. Sure. All right.
Can I get some clarification, or can I ask clarification? So it sounds like that, generally speaking, so it's sort of is this a conceptual approval? Is this a preliminary approval? What level?
There's no approval.
Okay.
We're just we want more information.
Okay, more information. But it did sound like there's a consensus that we're going in the right direction.
I think the style is looked at as acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
I think square footage, you're close, but we're still asking for some reduction.
In terms of working with the neighbors to clarify the easements, so that we're both on the same page exactly where the easements are. We have a preliminary agreement with the city as it relates to the feasibility of it, and then it's within the city's guidelines and standards. But it's more talking to the neighbor about, where this is, and then from the board in terms of how these trees, make sure that these trees are going to be okay from an arborist standpoint. So that's what I thought I heard. Reduce the square footage, and you're leaving that up to us to take a harder look at, see if we can get that a little bit smaller. There was a question about the driveway. Somebody said,
the
I think Bernie said, maybe. Is that the materials?
Yeah, the materials.
Okay.
And when you get to that tier 3 level, all of these materials are going to start coming into effect. Yeah.
Okay, good. Understand the grading quantities from a civil engineer. That's tier 3 swap. And that we're okay with the main ridge, but looking at breaking up this a little bit more lower. So I think that's what I heard.
In the landscape plan.
In the landscape plan.
And also remembering to your cut and fill calcs on the new sewer.
From a civil.
Yeah.
And for
the sewer.
The sewer as well, yeah.
Proposed sewer.
You said that, or someone said that was that the neighbor in this one, they would like to talk to you,
Yeah.
have a glass of wine and see what you're doing.
Yeah.
It's always a good idea.
I'd like to comment, because you were about the square footage. What I was thinking is this is a sensitive area right in here.
Right.
So this is where I would invite you, reduction of square footage, your primary focus be in that area, right in this area.
But specifically
right
in
this area.
here.
Yeah,
right.
because of the privacy issue and the oak trees and all that stuff going
The
on.
primary issue is going to be making sure we have a functional master bedroom in here, and yet at the same time trying to be more sensitive to them. Yeah.
So I think you have it.
Okay.
I think you have it, and you have an indefinite continuance. So you're just going to, put yourself back on the agenda when you're ready.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for everybody coming. I think there's a couple neighbors still here.
Thank you.
So we're going to move to item number 4, 1417 Almond Avenue. This is a second concept review. The project was here last reviewed at April 11th, 2011. We'll have some minutes here in a second, and if the applicant can come to the board.
Should this be pointing this way, or is that? I saw the don't touch, so I don't know if this can move it. Okay.
So we're gonna read the minutes for the. We're going to read the minutes for this project. Denise, if you could.
Simplify the architecture and provide a cleaner and simpler architectural style. Reduce the size, bulk, scale, mass, and square footage of the proposed project.
Simple and short.
That's it, yeah.
So if the applicant could introduce himself and his presentation.
My name is Cesar Cruz. I'm the designer on the project. And to start off with, the square footage numbers, reduced it by 224 square feet, which brought us down from 104% FAR to 93. That reduction was in the double cantilever, which was along this entire side and this back wall, which I believe was also an issue with simplifying the project. As well as removing the double cantilever, we offset it further in from the first floor wall line, 14 inches, give it a roof line that's existing to remain there to break up that second floor wall line, which is the same that we're going to have on the opposite side. The rear of the property was removed. There was an additional offset here, which was removed to reduce the square footage again and to simplify this back wall. Let's see what else we have here. There was a deck that was originally going to be proposed at the front of the property, which was, again was removed to just overall reduce the bulk of the size and scale of the project. The garage, I believe an issue came up with the offset of some setback. I originally had it at 1'6", and a suggestion from the board was to make that a minimum of 3 feet, which was accomplished here on both sides to keep the cost of the materials down from combustible or non-combustible materials. The hip roof on the second floor is completely complete hip roof, which originally I had a gable end over here, again to reduce the size, overall size, bulk, and scale of the project. And then I'll go again in more detail on the elevations. This wall line here was where the double cantilever was at, which would be this side, and the opposite return here was where the double cantilever was at. Now we are set back 14 inches, which would accommodate for this roof. And I included a small porch area at the side on the exit entry, the rear of the property, of the dwelling, with the post here to somewhat try to get something to match what's in the existing front elevation. Add some knee bracing here on the deck, which would also match or try to match a small roof element that I tried to put on this rear of the property to break up that wall line, and we'll see that on the next elevation. Which would be here, just a small element there, just an idea I came up with to try and break that wall line up there. This is the porch area that I just mentioned on the last elevation, which would be the entry. And then again, the offset from first floor existing to second floor proposed with the roof element there. And I also, there's another entry on this property which I try to incorporate the same design that I have on the back here with the knee bracing and to try and blend this whole thing together. This elevation here, the only change that was done here was the reduction of the rear. The original design came very close to the to the carport, and that was the reduction done in that section there. Again, the same elements with the first floor roof line to break up the second floor wall line. And that's pretty much all the changes.
All right, thank you. I'd like to open up public comment. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak on this project? Sir, is this for the next one? And is there any letters in the file? Okay, so we'll close. Oh.
I just wanted to bring to the board's attention, this parcel is located in the CP zone, which generally is a commercial zone, and we don't regulate fence heights as we would a single-family zone or other zones, where the maximum height in a front yard setback can't exceed 3.5 feet. However, this plan was referred to transportation staff, and they actually are requiring the fence heights to not exceed 42 inches in height along the driveways. So I just wanted to relay that to the board and to the applicant.
Thank you. At that point, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the board for their questions. Question for the applicant: was this new plan reviewed by Public Works for the access in and out of that carport area?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Transportation or public works? Transportation, yes.
Questions?
Mr. Chair, is all of the driveway existing or adding? Majority of it is existing. We're going to be adding from the addition, from where the existing driveway terminates at the existing dwelling.
Okay.
Right there, and then this will be added from that point.
That triangle piece comes out.
Right.
Okay.
What type of drive is it?
That's just a concrete slab on grade existing slab driveway.
Okay. Additional questions? Jim?
So you'll have to get a modification for the carport? Or
No.
Because it's a...
Zero property.
Zero.
So you're
setback.
able to build.
We can go all the way to zero. I've moved it to 3 feet.
Okay.
You still have to maintain this setback over on the
6
side?
feet, yes.
Okay.
Question.
Bernie?
Carport that you've got proposed, is that a standard size, the proportions and
18 by 20,
everything?
yes.
Because it seems a little bit on the thin side on the post.
Yes, it is on the minimal, 18 feet. So it is the smallest that we can make it. The post or the overall size of the
post,
carport?
the support.
Oh, yes, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can definitely increase that. Yes, it's not an issue with that. We can add a little more.
Mr. Chair and members of the board, I just wanted to bring to attention mostly the applicant in response to Bernie's comment that if you do make any alterations to that carport, transportation would have to review it again for maneuverability.
Any additional questions, or we'll move to comments? Comments? Brian?
I really like what you did with your revising the elevations. A couple things that really stick out for me on your northeast elevation here is this front window seems unusually large. It's almost like a storefront window.
We do have photos, if that would help.
It's existing?
Yes.
Then forget what I just said. So is this whole porch area existing?
That's all existing.
Then I compliment you on your design.
Okay. Any other comments? This project, from what I see on the agenda, it still needs environmental assessment, so we can't make an approval or anything, but we can only make comments. Let's help the applicant get through this process.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make positive comments as it moves forward through the maze of approvals.
Could you say that the project would be ready for approval if the environmental assessment was done?
Yes, I guess we would still need to see some color boards and
But bulk mass scale,
bulk mass and scale, given the zoning,
and
is
appropriateness of design and coordination in conjunction with the existing building is compatible?
I think he's done a good job.
Okay. Any other comments? Aaron, any comments?
I would echo those comments. Only suggestion I would have is maybe some high-quality windows, at least in the front. There's that picture window that's quite nice. I think you can play off that. Be nice for front elevation.
You're not planning on replacing the concrete driveway at all, are you? You're just adding on to it?
We're not planning on it, but if it's something that the board wants me to do, we'll have it done.
I was kind of, I was kind of seeing if you were going to come up with that or not.
But they could cut it out of the
Just
existing.
right in the center. Yeah, just to give it some green.
Well, we'll let you kind of come up with that if you feel it's appropriate. Yes, Bernie?
So, am I reading this correctly, that right now there's a chain link fence
Yes.
in front, but that's going to be replaced with it can only be 42
inches.
Yes.
42 inch, what will that be made out of?
Well, at this point, we were just going to go with the chain link fence, to be honest with you.
I think it would
If
be
it's
a lot
something,
more neighborhood friendly if it, I mean, maybe you need that for little kids or something, I
yeah,
don't
that's
know,
exactly.
but maybe we could ask if you could find out if planting something in, through the chain link fence, something to grow there that would soften up the curb appeal.
Yeah, the softening of it is a nice idea, if we can do that. Any additional comments? If not, let's get a motion for tying Denise's comments together. Having the applicant come back when the environmental assessment is done. We're not sure when that is.
Yeah.
Continued indefinitely to full board or back to consent?
Probably consent.
Consent? Okay. Who's making this motion?
I guess I am.
Okay.
So I'd like to make that motion for an indefinite continuance back to consent with a color board and with the following comments: to soften the front chain link fence with some plantings, and to examine the possibility of a ribbon driveway.
Include in your motion, if you could, the acceptability of the design.
And the design is acceptable in bulk, mass, and scale, and compatible with the neighborhood, given the current zone.
Second by Aaron.
I think we're going to lower the fence as well.
Yeah.
From
42.
Is that a given? Or
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't need to make that part of the motion.
Any other comments or suggestions here? Everybody understand it? Okay, let's have a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstains? Motion carries unanimously. We'll see you, somebody will see you on consent at some point.
At some point, might be some time.
Thank you for your changes.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
So we're going to move to item number 5, which is a new item on the agenda, 1422 San Miguel Avenue. This is a proposal for 646 square foot of residential additions, consisting of 304 square feet of on the second floor and 342 square feet on the third floor of an existing 3,055 square foot 3-story home, single-family residence. No changes are proposed to the existing 1,092 square foot basement. The site includes an existing detached 1,179 square foot garage accessory building involving a 2-car garage, an accessory building, and a covered patio area. The proposal includes 1,368 square feet of existing patios and decks, a 500 square foot deck addition proposed at grade and involving 46 cubic yards of fill, a new 743 square foot veranda and stairs, a new 363 square foot deck on the third floor. The proposed total of 4,880 square feet on a 18,664 square foot lot is 110% of the guideline floor to lot area ratio. We can take action on this project. So if you could introduce yourself and your team.
Yes, my name's Jack Schaefer. I'm the architect.
Welcome.
This is Rosaline Wynn and Wayne Green, husband and wife.
All right.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, if
Yes.
I might just make a quick staff announcement. I just wanted to bring it to your attention that this proposal is 110% of the guideline FAR. It is a guideline since the FAR, or the lot size, exceeds 15,000 square feet, but we went ahead and asked the applicants in advance, and they have done so, provided an FAR analysis, which I'm going to provide to you now.
Thank you. And your presentation?
Yes, thank you. I was asked to bring additional photographs of the site.
We'll put them on here.
And can I have this one right here?
This one right here, yeah.
Okay, the existing residence is a 3-story, although looking at the calculations, it's possible, and we would just be playing with numbers, depending on where we put a wall, it would actually have a basement. We could meet the basement requirement with an additional 7 feet of wall. But we didn't do it. It's not going to change the appearance of the building. I think.
Is your house on these photos at all?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. We're looking west, up the street, up San Miguel here. This is the existing structure. This is what we're talking about right here. It was originally a barn, and over the years it's been modified to be a residence. Looking west, or this is the west neighbor. There's a 2-story residence. Here's another view of the... There's so much foliage there. Everybody's protecting their views. So this is the neighbor to the west. And here is the neighbor to the east looking up the street. This is the house. We were out in the street looking This is, again, the residence that we are adding on to. If we're at the driveway looking south, there's a single story directly south, and another single story directly south, and then southwest, single story. From the street, looking directly at the house, this is what you see. Basically, you see the top, the main floor, and then, excuse me, the middle floor, which is the main floor, and then the top floor, which is has a existing bedroom and foyer, and a dormer in the bedroom.
This would be the third floor that we're talking?
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. The main level being the second level.
Okay.
Okay. This is the east side of the house. Let's see, do we have? What else you got here? Okay, yeah, here. And so this is the west side of the house, and there's a deck, an existing deck, with a lattice to provide privacy. The lot is 116 feet wide. The proposed veranda, which surrounds the front and the two sides of the house, is 31 feet 4 from the property line on the east side, and on the west side we're 17 feet 4. This is a location of an existing deck which we're going to rebuild.
It's permitted?
It's permitted.
Okay.
We want to add to the master suite. This is going to come out about 2.5 feet. We got about 4 feet here and 4 feet in the back. We're going to add a laundry and storage area in the back, and a new entrance with a stairway coming up to the veranda. The veranda is 5 feet deep along these sides. And then we have a 6'8" addition by about 14 feet, I think it is, entrance on the first floor.
And is this an existing deck that's being removed?
Yes, that is the existing deck that you see here, and it is being removed.
Okay.
This is the main living area, showing the veranda, the entrance. This is the existing master bedroom. We're going to be remodeling the kitchen, and we're going to be adding on to the master suite. What you see here in the shaded area is what's being added. So we've got about 2.5 feet here. And it's about 4 feet here. We're adding the storage and mudroom here on the main level. Because they actually access it from up above where the garages are. So this is the main entrance for them, for the owners.
It's never had a front door. Can't find a front door.
So this, hopefully we're announcing it at this point with the redesign. The upper level consists of an existing foyer. We're going to turn that into a study. There's an existing bathroom here, and there is one bedroom. My clients are in the process of adopting children. They want to add another bedroom. That is the purpose of this bedroom. It's for the new child. We are adding additional square footage by having a clear story extend over the roof. This is where the little dormer pops up right now, but there's not really usable space on either side of it. So by putting the clear story across there, we'll actually gain some usable space in there, make that a usable bedroom. This is the demolition plan showing the existing. The downstairs, there's no change to the downstairs. Here is a 3D simulation.
From here to here?
Yes, we have the existing structure and the proposed structure. Wayne is a builder. I've known Wayne for 25 years, and he loves the craftsman style. So he wants to take the barn look away. And we'll be adding this clear story, which is going to add additional room for the existing, where we have the dormer now, this bedroom. And it will be providing additional light into the living room and the foyer. This is the veranda going around the house. We haven't really changed the size of any of the openings in the existing structure, other than eliminating some windows on the side where we're providing the new entrance. And here you can see the new entrance. Let's see, I'm sorry, let's see. Yeah, the new entrance here at the middle level. This is the roof of the new entrance. This is the existing roof line of the structure. Actually, it's like this. And we want to pop this up. This is our new clear story along the front, and we'll have a bracket here to hold sun control, the trellis. We'll be using Shakertown stained cedar paneling and either Eldorado or cultured stone, ledge stone with a actual grout joint. Going over to the west side, you can see this is the existing roof line. This is the additional bedroom in the back of the structure with the deck at the side. This is the existing deck that's going to be rebuilt. And we've extended the handrails around to the side there. This is the north elevation, what they'll see when they come in. This is the door. This is an existing doorway. We're going to be changing the sheltering device above to a little rake roof. This is the new entrance. And like I said, this is the new bedroom in the back. There's also the deck on the side. This is the deck and the side. So that's at the third story. Let's see.
Anything else?
That's a quick run through.
I saw an FAR chart. I didn't get to read it, but is there kind of a synopsis of where you are?
Yeah, the property, the existing property is at 0.22. The average for the area is 0.24. But the proposed project is, I believe it was 0.26, is that right? 0.26.
So the numbers that we're looking at here are the existing?
That's the existing, right.
This is proposed?
Well, I do not have a sheet like this for the proposed. This would change to 0.26 for the proposed, which would, put it up here, move it up 2 notches, basically.
Okay.
They do have the calc on the first sheet.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Which brings up.
Anything else for your presentation?
Not at this point.
All right. Thank you. At this.
I'm sorry. One thing. My clients visited with all their neighbors, and I'll let them report what the neighbors said.
Yeah, everyone.
If you could speak on the mic, I'm sorry. And then we need to put this on.
Everyone that we were able to meet with in the 10 closest projects and closest houses to the project were all in favor of it. They like the concept.
All right. Thank you. That's always a good idea to meet with the neighbors. Anything else? Okay.
Well, I only think that one of the neighbors, I think Rosemary was telling me, said it was an upgrade to the neighborhood because getting rid of that barn, and the material.
Okay. I'm going to open up public comment. I do have one public speaker slip, and we typically use that chair for the public, and if you could just vacate for 2 minutes or less. And this is Joe Cantrell.
Hi, I'm Joe Cantrell. I live about 2 long blocks away on San Miguel in an old house that we bought many years ago from Bernie. But I'm only here because it's sort of a knee-jerk reaction at the startling FAR number on this. I'm a battle-scarred veteran of FAR wars, but I have only 2 concerns. And let me say first that I'm not speaking in opposition to this project. Looks like a beautiful house. There's some mitigating circumstances in this situation, I think, in terms of FAR. As I see it, it's a very large lot. It's built on a slope. A significant amount of the enclosed square footage is basement, so that's a special circumstance as well, and I recognize that. I just want to urge the board to do two things, and I think I speak for a lot of other people on the East Mesa area. I hope that whatever findings you make, and it'll be an interesting discussion you have, if you find that you approve of this project anywhere near the FAR that we have, that you make it very explicit and blunt in your findings, that your findings are the result of the specific circumstances of this project. And I know you will do that. But that's a concern that I and many others, I believe, have, because you know and I know that once a 110 FAR is approved, you're going to have people wanting to use that as a precedent to break down the doors for situations where these special circumstances might not be present. The second thing that I was concerned with, but it looks like it's not a concern based on the plans that I see here, was the veranda space. When this board was brand new, there was an especially ugly and personal situation in the East Mesa where a project was approved with verandas on the second floor, and when it got built, the posts were especially wide, the openings were especially small, and the veranda was built into the roof line, so that it looked like in a final presentation that the veranda was actually an enclosed area of the house. Then within a fairly short time, that same project came back here and asked to enclose that veranda based on the logic that since it looked like that anyway, they might as well do that.
I think we understand your concerns.
Which seemed like an abuse. And I'm certainly not imputing any motives like that to these folks. And based on the plans, that doesn't seem to be a concern. But that's why I'm here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Any additional letters in the file? Okay. At this point, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the board for their questions.
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Brian?
On the second floor, in the new bedroom, the bath, it looks like a wall goes into a window. What's going on? Clarify that.
The upper floor.
Page 03.
That window will come out.
Okay.
Something. Additional questions?
Thanks for that clarification.
Yes, Bernie.
On the 110%, was there additional allowance for the basement, or which type of calculation did they use?
No, that 110% FAR includes the entire basement area.
Yeah, if I can make a comment, can I address that?
I think it was.
Oh, okay. Well, just as a clarification that, like I said, we could move a retaining wall 7 feet and knock that down to 0.98, but it just wasn't. It wouldn't change the appearance of the building, so it's just plain numbers.
Okay.
Do you have a plan of the basement?
Yeah.
And what is the basement being used for? Is it habitable?
Well, yes. My clients are both self-employed. They work at home. And this is actually used as a workshop for Rosalind. She is a jewelry designer. And Wayne actually uses this for his construction business.
And then how about open yard area?
We have the open yard area. There are actually 3 places that we could have that, but they like the idea of, because the kitchen is here and the dining's here, that we were going to extend the existing patio. We'll extend it and add about 500 square feet, so this would meet the open area requirements. There's also an opportunity to have it here and to have it here, but we wanted to put it there.
I have a question. On the second floor, or I guess it's the third floor, This area here is a two-story volume now?
Well, would you call it a two-story now? Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty
I mean,
tall, so we're just kicking it out now.
23-foot high ceilings. I mean, it's a barn. and it's still
Well,
not-
currently, this
The
is...
ridge is right here.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's sloping down, and then we're maintaining the same ridge, but we're adding that clear story.
Now, the only purpose of adding this was to get more space over here?
Well, and to bring light into this space here.
Well, and that's a big ocean view. I mean, that's the...
'Cause this is open, so you'll actually be able to see through here.
Okay. Additional questions? Another one. If I was a visitor, where would I park and how would I get to the front door? You said you had a problem with the front door.
Well, the existing front door is here right now. People either wander up the driveway and try and find the front door. If they know the house, well, then they park up here. Otherwise, this is all parking along San Miguel.
If they park here, are they going to come just through that door pretty much? Or are they
No,
going
they
to...
would come.
Well, they could go either way.
They could go either way.
Right.
Okay. Yes, Denise.
So this is all proposed to be paving?
Well, this is currently paving, and it's the patio, and we're looking at extending it here. Now, we haven't really decided what material it's going to be at this point. I think that it's...
But it's just on grade?
This is on grade. This has been cut. This has actually been kind of scooped like this to provide for what's existing down there below right now. So we're going to come across here.
Michelle, this project, is it going to be a Tier 2 level SWIP?
Yes.
Or not Tier 3?
Tier 2.
Okay. Let's move to comments if we could. And try to keep them pretty big picture item. Not looking at a little detail yet.
Paul? Sure, I'll jump in. I'm looking at two items. One of them has to do with the dormer up above. And I'm not resolved yet, but I'm struggling with the way that this looks and how big your house is, the profile. And then when we basically move this over, it's beautiful architecture, but it's adding additional height and volume to the structure. And it makes this home look larger. And what we're gaining is not an additional living area, but it's just more interior volume in the house. So I'm having trouble rationalizing that, even though the architecture looks fine. The other issue I'm having, that's the other. The other issue I'm looking at is the shape of the roof for your second story, or this room in the back. This roof does not match all the other roofs. It seems a little bit out of place. So there's another view of it over here. Somehow I think there needs to be better integration in how you go about it. That's your challenge, but that's what I'm looking at as being a little on the odd side.
Thank you, Paul. Those are exactly the two comments that I was coming up. Let's get our comments out, and then at one time we could do it. Any additional comments? Aaron?
I think it's a great style for the Mesa. I just think it's too aggressive of a project. It was a 2-story with a little bit of a 3-story element, and now it's just a 3-story. Yeah, you could probably be more efficient with your interior space. The open two below is pretty big. So I'd just like to see it reduced.
Okay. Bernie, how are you following on this one?
I was looking at the compatibility, and I think the style is compatible. I think it's really thoughtfully done with what's already there, and the beautiful landscaping in the front is great. But I do think it does need to be reduced. This neighborhood in particular is very sensitive. They were the Marine Terrace and slightly over that whole area were the ones where the NPO really got started, and people are sensitive, and I don't think we want to be this aggressive.
Great, thanks. You want to just go down the line? Paul, how are you feeling on bulk mass scale? I know the dormer part. Okay, Jim?
Yeah, I think, if you're talking about bringing light in
view.
And I think you can do something with skylights, possibly. And that would bring light in. I think that view-wise, looking out the clear story windows, you're back on the other side of the room, You're back quite a ways. And I don't know if you'll really catch that much view out of the clear story, because they're up off the floor to start with. I think I'd like to see you go ahead and finish the room at the end. Get ceiling height that's habitable over that area so that you can use that. But the clear story windows, I think, could be removed, and it would help with the mass of the front.
Okay, so that's not going to affect square footage at all, but the bulk and the mass
That's
of
correct.
the project
Yeah.
could be modified. Okay, I feel very similar. Denise, how are you feeling about this? The FAR, the bulk, the scale?
That's bothering me too, and some of these elevations are bothering me as far as how flat they are, and it just seems that, it's bulk with a capital B, in my opinion, as far as the way that it presents, and it's, especially from the street, it looks like almost like a battleship in a way, coming up in these tiers, and I just think it is too aggressive.
Just remember, you're going to be looking at it like that. Yeah. Okay. Brian.
I kind of liked it. Maybe so. I can see. I know exactly which directions you're going and aiming it, and I'd say maybe explore another look at the dormers above. Maybe they kind of take it off of something that looks like that, perhaps. But that's about all I can say. I mean, exploring the dormers so they don't look so aggressive. But I think I'm feeling that it's because it's an AutoCAD drawing. It's why it looks kind of battleship-like. It's because you don't have the real feel of what it's really going on. So
You've seen the photo,
and I love this photo. I think this is great, so I'm very comfortable with this. But like I said, maybe the dormers here are a little bit too aggressive, and they need to be softened. And that's about all I can think of.
Thanks. I wanted to kind of point to another feature that I wrote down but nobody spoke upon. Obviously, we have a big FAR. We have all of this veranda area. We also have this deck on the side here that's a pretty good size. Nobody commented on.
Right.
Not the view, it's far enough away from the property line, but it does add development to this design. And I'm not sure really what the purpose of bringing it around the front would be.
That's the back.
Or the back, but I mean, it's of no use. I feel like if this was smaller, it would be better. And it's a big project, so we're looking, I think this is an excessive amount of deck off of that level. Again, I'll chip in again on this dormer issue. The very first thing that I thought of, and why I asked about if that was a two-story volume, was if you put another gabled dormer kind of matching the one on that side, I think it will reduce the scale of the project down, and I think it will be as successful, probably more successful than the full dormer there, the full shed dormer. Front door. Okay. So we actually have a project that we could take an action on. From the comments I heard, I'm not sure we can take a positive action on.
Okay. May I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. I know you were concerned about the FAR, although, you know, we're not as high as other houses.
We know.
Right. And I could move that, like I said, I could move the retaining wall, and it would reduce the FAR to 0.98. So I think because of the width, we have to, I think that, I want you to remember the width of this lot. It's almost 116 feet wide, so we have large setbacks for interior yards instead of the 6 feet. So it's not really a common situation, I don't think.
Yeah. I think you had more support on the FAR on the board than the bulk and mass of the project. So
what I hear you saying is the clear story in the deck. I mean, that's what I hear more than anything. Is that...
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Paul.
2 items. I mean, I want to, if we stare at this picture and we realize what we're going to see, I mean, this is the existing building, it is what it is, and I just feel like we're going to be making the roof larger, taller, more prominent. And when it's read as just a simple, you know, asphalt shingle or tile roof or whatever it is with a couple of dormers for light, that's one thing. But when this becomes an entire clear story across the top, it just reads stronger. And the whole idea is to keep these things, I hate to say petite, but you know, a little bit more in scale. And so that's where this thing kind of grows a little bit in proportion. Another issue, this is really minor, but on the back side of it, the articulation of the architecture, if we can go to the rear elevation, it doesn't need to be in the motion. It's just something that there's opportunities for when you design. You have a cantilever right here, and you know the roof I had a concern with, and then how this cantilever is supported, and then Glenn had a, I'm sorry, him. He had a concern about this deck over here. But if I draw some board members' attention to this kind of condition, and then if we look on the other side, when you go through and you do your next design pass, you'll see that there's, you know, how to address this cantilever and this element that comes across, and that's all new construction that's happening there. So,
you know, I would like to throw in some positive comments too. I mean, it's a very nice design change from the barn. There's some really good details. And the addition of the veranda around will actually, I think, scale down the project some. I mean, it does add a roof, but it adds a lot of shadow, and it breaks down the mass of the major building behind it. So those are all positive things. And we haven't said take that out because it's massive. It's mostly the dormer element, I think, and maybe this deck. And again, Paul was absolutely correct about this roof. It's not 100% solved at the moment, I don't believe.
I think, if I could just address that roof for a minute.
Sure.
As you can see from, well, anyway, from the actual roof, slope portion of the roof is going to disappear. You will not see it. It's just enough drainage there to get the water off. So really, you've got horizontal lines that you're going to be seeing. So, and the existing, I mean, this is existing. You know, this is the existing roof. It has these weird roofs anyway.
Sure,
from the barn. So
I understand.
It's like trying to get that to tie together.
I would.
Can I say something?
Well,
Oh, wait, I like this comment.
I don't want to. I actually, okay, so I'll be the devil's advocate. In this particular style of roofing, which is a takeoff from Victorian architecture, this is a very common way of dealing with them. They have a lot of very shallow roofs, so it goes in keeping with this style.
Yeah, and the shed dormer does too. I mean, that's one thing that gives it the style,
Well,
which it doesn't have any style now, and we didn't.
Yeah,
we're not trying to.
Yeah, the problem with the shed dormer is that it adds to the mass of the building more than the gable dormer would. And again, if you were at 80% FAR, we wouldn't be talking about the shed dormer, but you've got so many other elements and an FAR that we have to kind of be a little bit more critical on you because it's just a high FAR, and it has to be an exceptional project when we're done. And you're pretty far along that way because it's a very good design project. So, yes.
May I also add that it adds to the apparent height from the front there. That's the part that bothers me the most. Yeah, the way that it's just sort of stacked straight up like that.
Sure. So, I think you've heard a lot of comments. I'm going to look for somebody to wrap those comments into a motion. And I have a feeling the motion is going to be returned with some revisions versus approvals, from what I heard. Do you have an idea of when you, I guess you might not know until you hear the motion, how long that would take
How
you?
could you meet every 2 weeks? Is that right?
We're every 2 weeks, and we can do an indefinite, and it could be whenever. It could be 4 weeks, 6 weeks, or something like that. But I'm looking for a motion. Okay, Aaron?
I think generally the motion would be an indefinite continuance back to the full board. With the following comments, the board can support the general style of the architecture, to study the mass, bulk, and scale of the dormer area of the third level, reduce the third level deck. Is it third level?
Yeah, it's third. It is the third.
Third level deck. Simplify the cantilever in the rear elevation. And that's all I have.
I'd like the board to weigh in on the compatibility of the veranda. It seems really big for the neighborhood, so I was hoping that maybe we could study the scale and the size and the...
So, Bernie, when you say veranda, I want to be real careful. I mean, you're talking about
the thing that goes all the way.
Okay. Okay.
All the way around.
All right.
It just doesn't seem... There's another house on San Miguel a little bit similar, but it's a lot smaller and just more muted design.
Okay. That was your...
I think the third level deck I commented on.
Yeah,
the second level veranda I think actually adds to the character of the building.
Did we get a second on your motion yet?
Bernie did.
Okay.
Can you turn to sheet 4 real fast?
So we're talking about this element right now.
Given the setbacks, I think it's acceptable. There might be areas that could be taken out, maybe here, there, but I think generally wrapping around is a good design element.
Okay, so Bernie, do you want to second that motion now?
I want to second the motion, and that I want to see if anybody wants to put my comment in the motion or
I
not.
tend to agree. I think it's an interesting feature to have it wrap around. It's part of the style. It's part of the genre of this style of architecture to have a wraparound porch. It's kind of interesting.
Okay, so we have a first and second. Additional comments?
I had a comment having to do about the cantilever on the second side. It's more to study the detailing of the cantilever. Sometimes they have some chunky beams, or they have some kind of trim, some trim board that happens.
Is there any? He talked about the shed dormer. Is there any comments regarding the site at all? About the patio, There's no trees being affected by any of this, is there? Okay.
Will there be a landscape plan being proposed? Some plan for the patio area that you were talking about, maybe?
Well, when we were talking about the veranda, what I keep on thinking are there going to be some vines that are growing up each of those posts at some point coming across, or there's opportunities there. Whether or not you would like that, I don't know, but I think if we had some landscaping, or at least told that there won't be any landscaping happening there. But you don't have to answer that question now.
No, maker of the motion, would you like to see some... He's a landscape architect.
There's existing landscaping, right? Yeah, so maybe just adding a little flair to the existing landscape. And the rear patio, I think, needs a plan.
Okay.
Is the accessory building getting changed at all?
No.
Nothing.
Okay. Any additional comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Denise?
I can't get over my concern over all that paving in the back there. I don't see a picture of any of that anywhere, so I can't quite visualize it. But then you're even adding to it. It was big already, and now there's a 500 square foot addition to the paving back there. It's enormous piece of paving. And it just, I don't know, it doesn't...
It's a motor court up there.
Is it?
Right.
But I'm not looking at the motor courts over here, right?
Right.
I'm
So this
talking
is all
about this.
landscape. This is all landscape.
What is this in here?
This
That's
currently
a lower patio?
is a patio area.
Is this wall, that wall?
Right.
Okay, so
Oh,
all,
excuse me, no. Let's see. It's this wall here. That's what this wall is.
this
So
wall?
the existing, well,
This
that,
is cut into the hillside
Right.
here. This is a retaining wall.
so
Hard to visualize, isn't it? But is it paving or is it grass?
we haven't determined what we're going to do
I
with this
see.
yet. Currently, there is, there's a planter here. There's a planter all here.
Mm-hmm.
This is landscape. This is landscape. This is all lawn area here.
Mm-hmm.
So currently, Wayne, isn't there, it's about like this, I think, a patio, and then the rest of it's planter. So we haven't really determined what we're going to do with this.
Okay, well, we'll make that part of the
Okay,
motion,
part
I'm
of the
sure.
landscape plan then.
Providing more information on this patio. Is there a retaining wall feature in some part of it?
Well, if you look at the elevation, it dies off. I mean, it starts off and it gets really, yeah.
Okay. So, first, second, we had comments. We have our comments all over there? Okay. So let's take it's an indefinite continuance back to full board. We'll take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? And abstain? You have a unanimous motion.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We look forward to your revisions. At this point, we have no other items on the agenda, and we will stand adjourned.
Glad you liked it.